Hi everybody, welcome to the October Dev Update. We're super excited. We have a lot to share with you today. We're going to talk about some upcoming events, going to give you an update on the roadmap, and we have two very special guests here today. I'm sure you're all aware of the New World to Go podcast. We have BDLG and Redbyrd from Studio Loot here, and they're going to host the show for us. So welcome.
Yeah, well, thank you for having us here, man. This is absolutely incredible to be here. We're super pumped to be here. It's a little surreal to be sitting here in this seat, something we've talked about for a very long time. And yeah, man, we're just super excited, so thank you.
Many a Monday mornings I'd come to work and just kind of quote some things that you talked about on the show, especially to our combat guy, so he might be angry at you when he gets here. I love how deep you guys break down the game, and that we take that and it tells us what the players are saying and how everyone's feeling about it, and we try to use that to guide us back in the game. And I know a lot of people have asked, get some content creators in there to ask some hard questions. So gloves are off. When this thing gets going today, have fun. Dig in. Just like it's just like your podcast.
Sounds good.
I look forward to instigating some sort of fist fight here on set today. So it's gonna be great.
Awesome. Well, with that, let's just dive right in.
All right, so I think we have an update to the roadmap coming up. So I think we're going to talk about that a little bit. Can we give predictions as to what's coming up on the roadmap before you jump in, or is that something we don't want to do?
You can absolutely do that, but first let me just address one topic real quickly, which is leaderboards. On the current roadmap that's announced, leaderboards were promised, and we missed that date. I just want to let everyone know we are working on leaderboards. It was a combination of some priority shifts and some problems we ran into creating it. It's still being actively worked on, and when it's ready, we're going to release it.
Awesome. I think leaderboards are going to be an amazing addition to the game for sure.
Cool.
All right, now your guesses.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Let's see.
All right, Red, what do you got?
I mean, I harp about this a lot. Raids is one of the things that I'm hoping to hear a little, just a tiny bit about today. Is in-game raid.
Yeah.
Well, we definitely are working on it. So let me first give a high level of where we are in our roadmap process. We're in the middle of what we call long-term planning on the team, and this is where we take a look at the next 9 to 12 months and plan things. So what I can give you with high confidence, first off, is December. We're going to have the Winter Convergence Festival, another round of that, and we're going to have a new expedition come out that is pretty freaking cool. We're combining the best parts of Amrine and Starstone into one expedition that's going to be a new mutation in the rotation.
It's going to be a super cool mashup. It's going to be really cool.
And it's not going to be a temporary thing. It's going to be live.
We have a name for the
Not yet.
Frankenstein mutation that's going on?
No, but now I'm thinking Starmrine.
Starmrine.
Maybe, I don't know.
Hashtag.
Yeah. We're brainstorming,
Nope,
so
it's nothing's
nothing's
too
off
late.
the table.
Got
You know what?
but
I've
maybe a
fallen
little off the
into
table.
Dave Verfaillie land, which is bad naming.
Yeah.
And another thing we're going to have is an updated roadmap. So right now we're going to give you an update, and we're going to talk about things that we're working on. And I'm going to circle back to your question now, which is the raid. We are for sure working on that cool sandworm into a raid for players, an endgame raid. Very excited about that.
It's going to be very difficult. So that is going to show up on the public test realm at some point, and we'll need people to test the heck out of that.
I'll be there.
Because we need it to be near impossible. And that's the plan. Oh, and speaking of the sandworm, your followers and your Twitch chat was wondering if the sandworm damages you at all out in the open world if you happen to come upon it. Most of the time, no. But there are two instances where, yes, the sandworm will damage you, and it's if you happen to be unlucky enough to be standing right over its mouth when it breaches the ground.
Oh my gosh, this is real.
So chat didn't lie.
It might be a first.
Wow.
So you can't fight back, sorry.
Yeah,
But,
not yet.
Yeah.
Take one for the
Exactly.
team, and eventually you'll be able to punch them back.
Pin our
Exactly.
anger and aggression up until the raid comes up.
Exactly. Hold on to that rage.
Yeah.
So this, I don't know if this is so much of a guess as it is kind of a wish list item for me, is territory control and some adjustments coming to that system. Is there anything like that coming up on the roadmap?
We're constantly adjusting territory control. There are some changes slated for, the next few, by March for sure, coming in for that. you have any specifics on that, Katie?
So we are adjusting some of the money that's going around. Those adjustments have already been announced and are in the recent update by the time that this goes live. But then there's even more that we're doing and hunting down, like how you can influence how you assert your influence in the open world, and how you can deck for the wars, and how many folks need to be slotted from your company. These are all things that we're chasing down. But as Scott said, it's not something for right now. It's something that we are planning and actively working on.
And beyond that, there's some bigger changes we want to make, but we're not ready to talk about yet.
All right.
Awesome.
We got to keep some secrets, you guys. Come
on
on.
now.
How are we supposed to surprise and
I'm about to
delight
go
if there's
snoop
no
around the office
surprises?
I'm going to say I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'm going to go look at desks.
Okay. So
2 years ago,
security-
you might have found something. Not work from home, I don't know,
Yeah.
good luck. A couple other things we're working on that I think are pretty cool. We're working on something we call Springtime Bloom event, which is our first spring event. So we're excited about that. This is a big one for the team. Cross-server OPR.
Ooh, yeah.
It's not just a big
Now we're
one for the
talking.
team. That's a
That's it.
huge one for the
big game.
community.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's something that we have been, putting in the framework and what we need to get that in place. And Outpost Rush, there's a lot of talk about what we should have be the first mode that we can manage. And I was harping on Outpost Rush being it because I was in a lower pop server for quite some time. And, it took a while for those queues to pop. So, now we don't really have that same problem, but it's good to be able to have those queues popping super fast. And with cross-server for Outpost Rush, it's gonna. So
And what's-
it's super exciting.
What's great about that is once we have Outpost Rush working and tuned well, then we can apply that technology to other instanced modes, which is going to be really exciting.
Yeah, it'll be big. We've been in the other end of some tough company meetings when moving, to a higher populated server, and one of the biggest things we always discussed was, well, are the OPR queues popping? And oftentimes they weren't. So it's going to be huge for those lower pop servers to have the opportunity to do those things in game.
Totally. There's some stuff that players do that we can anticipate as far as migration patterns, but there's a lot that we can't because you guys have minds of your own. You have different, things that you're running after and you're going for. Some people are chasing PvP, some people are running from PvP. So we consider all of this, but you guys are going to do what you're going to do. So we just have to figure out ways to react quickly, and this is going to give us more of that time to react by giving you the cross server for Outpost Rush, and as Scott said, other instance.
Yeah, it's all about access to the content you want to do as fast as possible.
Yeah.
So once we prove the technology out, we're the water through the pipes of Outpost Rush, you'll see other modes coming across, hopefully pretty quickly thereafter. And I'm really excited for this. This is something we've been working toward for a long time.
That's big.
Yeah. Another one we've been talking about for a while, we announced this last month, is, we didn't officially announce it, but we talked about it, was we're working on, yes, gear set management systems.
Yeah.
No, it's tough, even having 3 gear sets that you're managing, and I know some people have like 12, 13 that they're trying to carry. It's hard, and we understand that, and this is one we're taking a little slowly because we want to make sure that we make it much better and easy and something so you can really quickly switch, and it's got to feel good, and that's the most important thing.
Well, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So whenever we're talking about gear sets, is there also going to be a way to move items around in your inventory to organize them within the inventory now? Right now, things are like really stagnant, and you have to basically pull something out of your inventory. You can sort by time and weight, et cetera, but you kind of you have to pull something out of your inventory and then put it back in to get things like in a row or in an order or something, however you want them. I'm really OCD, so whenever something mixes up my umbral shards in the top of my inventory, I got to have them all together. Is there going to be a way to move stuff around in there too?
Well, I wish I could say yes, but we haven't really talked about that a lot. I haven't seen a lot of people ask for it, so now it's something we'll look at. And I don't know if it's hard or easy, but it's something that I'll now get on the list.
Everything's easy
Yeah.
until we start.
And it's funny because I always tease the team, hard and easy is the wrong measurement. It's time. How long does it take? That's the only
Yep.
measurement.
It can,
easy.
it can be something easy that takes us 6 months because we need iteration after iteration. And a lot of the stuff that we're talking about is definitely going to have to be on the public test realm for a little bit longer than we usually do, just because there's such different systems than what we currently have in place. So we should be expecting those to be out sooner than normal.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So don't expect it to then be released very soon
So
after
tomorrow.
you see it on PTR.
You heard it here first. Gear sets tomorrow. Whenever this airs.
Oh my gosh, cut.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about the sandworm trial. We have a couple more expeditions that are being worked on, and these are featuring the Varangian Knights. So it's going to be a little different. Those will be coming in, next year, but we're very excited about those. We are making improvements to Group Finder. We've seen, it's helped a lot in getting people together, but we want to make it even more streamlined and make some improvements there. Then the last thing we're working on is kind of a big deal. It's something I've wanted to get to for a long, long time. I think it's super important, and I think it's going to be an end game amongst itself, which is transmog.
Yeah, let's go.
So if you find a cool cowboy hat, I'd hold on to that.
I got a nice little tea hat with purple feathers.
That's
and
adorable.
I'm gonna, I knew it was coming. I hoped, I guess, that it was coming. So I'm ready, man. I'm ready to dress up for sure.
Sounds about right, yeah.
So we'll have, like I said, we'll have more to talk about, but we did want to give the community an update, and this is what we're actively working on. So these will be in the future. Again, I'm not going to pin down a time frame, but we're super excited.
Except for the ones that you said were in the
December.
winter. Those ones.
Pretty sure
Better
the winter.
labeled spring. Yeah.
I'm gonna hard commit to the winter convergence in winter.
That's a tough
Yeah.
one.
Yes, and springtide. bloom.
Excellent news.
Should be in
spring.
spring.
Great. Perfect. Ship it.
Awesome. Those are very exciting. I'm super excited about a lot of those for sure. I think gear sets, transmog are going to be huge for the game. And then cross server, I think, is probably on the top of almost everyone's wish list. So that's going to be awesome.
Is there anything that you guys think that we've left off that's super important to your communities and the community at large?
Yeah, I think really territory control is one of the things I see my community harp on a lot, because it's very hard to get into wars if you're kind of more of a casual player. And I know wars are kind of more of an in-game hardcore activity that's supposed to be, you're supposed to work your way up towards it. But it feels really bad for someone who does play the game a lot and then they're gated out of that content by another player. It's not necessarily you have to reach these marks to be able to participate in it. It's like, once I get the gear, once I get the items, and then this guy over here says I can't get into the war, that feels real bad. So that's one of the things that I hear a lot. So it's awesome to hear that you guys are working on that. That's probably one of the biggest ones. And then I think raids, like Red mentioned as well, is like a huge deal too. I think once more high-end, really tough PvE content comes in the game, people are going to really enjoy that. Yeah.
Awesome.
So people troll me about this all the time. I got one time. They told me on the PTR that there was a barber or an NPC named Barber, and so they convinced me that maybe barbershop or facial character appearance changes were coming into the game. Is that
Maybe we can have hair.
anywhere? I mean, I do have hair in the game. I got cornrows.
We could get wigs, but no. I think barbershop's a really important feature. It's not something that we're actively working toward right now, but long term, I think the game it's going to have to happen at some point.
If there's anything else that the communities would like from us, the forums are the best place to get that to us. Our community managers are scouring that, getting the feedback to us. Anything that's really exciting that folks think that we're missing. I know that we've given some non-committal answers, but we are bringing in all of that information and discussing it with the leadership team and the dev team and making sure that we are hitting on the things that are most important. So. Or
talk about it on New World to Go, because we listen.
Yeah. You have to watch yourself.
Gotta watch what I say.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to give some shameless plugs.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah. All right, to kick things off, we have Katie. Katie, we're going to ask some questions that a lot of the community want to know is when fresh start servers are coming.
You said the word, fresh start servers. Yeah. So we have been working really hard to get fresh start worlds put together. Those are going to be going live on November 2nd. We're going to have a steady stream of information so that people can look forward to and plan around the timing. It's not going to be like all the worlds open at the same time, kind of what we saw at launch. It's going to be a slow rollout of worlds. So you can plan for a time that works for you and hopefully avoid any long queues. But these fresh start worlds, it's going to be a completely new experience because we have the revamped starting experience and all that good stuff. people can't transfer into these worlds, so there's no old money making it in. You have to earn everything that you make in the Fresh Start world. So super exciting.
It's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna be there for it. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Yeah, I think it's gonna be almost like a relaunch or something. There's gonna be a lot of people there playing. It's super exciting.
Yeah, there's definitely like folks that don't really, want to do a Fresh Start experience because they work so hard on their characters. But I mean, it's worth it to just hop on over, try the new experience, see what it was like on launch day if you missed it, because it's going to be a lot of, level 2 and 3ers hanging out on the beaches. Yeah, and then that's the only part that is the same, is that you land on the beach. The rest of it's totally changed. And if folks have been spending any time on the public test realm, they've seen that it's totally different.
And amazing, by the way.
Well,
so
thank
good.
you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. We took a lot of feedback to make that happen. So I remember the first time I hopped into the new tutorial and I saw the change in the withers or the lost that are in there, and they kind of have a withered like feel to them because there's like corruption running through their bodies like veins. I was like, nailed it.
Yeah,
So
look
good.
incredible. Yeah, it is good.
It was
It's
really
very
cool.
good.
Yeah, and to celebrate the Fresh Start server, I'm designing a new creator campaign, very much akin to kind of as a spiritual feel of Battle for New World, right? So it's going to go alongside the Fresh Start servers. Fresh Start servers, Fresh Start worlds, which one is it?
They're fresh. I mean, they're servers.
All right, fresh,
But we call them Fresh Start Worlds because you
Okay.
want it. They'll have their own names and all that stuff. So it's just like you're joining this new world. So
Awesome. So Fresh Start Worlds.
Yeah.
This new campaign is called Return to Aeternum, or I lovingly call it Returnum to Aeternum. And we're going to bring groups of, you like that, right?
Oh, yeah, that was great.
Returnum to Aeternum.
Nailed
Very
it.
good, Greg.
Very good. Yes.
Thank
very
you.
Good.
Thank you. I try to get a dad joke in there as much as I can.
Oh man.
So we're going to be bringing these teams of content creators together from around the world. We're going to have teams from North America, Europe, LATAM, and we're going to be putting them into their own private environment. And there'll be 3 captains per team. And so we'll have 4 teams. It's going to get complicated, so stay with me.
Right. I'm like, what do you
Each team is going to have their own world, so they're going to be trying to accomplish a series of objectives in that world. And as they think of them as bingo card lists of objectives. So Team 1 completes 6 of the 8 bingo card objectives. They are now done with that list, and they move on to the next list, which has a harder set of objectives. There are 4 sets of objectives, again, ranging from easiest to hardest. The really cool part is each one of these objective bingo card lists is tied to a specific Twitch drop. So all the teams are going to start with Twitch drop 1, which would be a cool item. The first team that completes that list of objectives and it flips to the next list of objectives, they then move on to the next Twitch drop, an even cooler item. So then the teams behind, kind of lights a fire under them. It's really about each of these teams trying to be the first team that gets to the next Twitch drop.
Yeah.
And talking to Phil, we've got some awesome Twitch drops that we're going to be using for this event. And another really important piece that I think is kind of the cherry on top is, talking to a lot of these content creators, they might have fallen off after a couple months, in the beginning of New World. And a theme that they just kept saying over and over again is like, I still really like New World. I want to come back to New World, but I want that fresh start again. And so tying it to Fresh Start servers, what we're going to do with these different teams, they're going to be experiencing their own Return to Aeternum experience with their communities and other creators they'll get to invite in. But then when Return to Aeternum is over, those servers become joinable as well.
Oh, cool.
So as a viewer, I could be watching my favorite content creator and be like, that world that they're creating, the fun they're having in there, you'll eventually be able to join that world with them when Return to Aeternum is over.
Oh,
but along the Fresh Start worlds are happening alongside that.
Yeah, but you get like the insight into what that server looks like even before you join it, which is not something that we really offer. It's kind of like a,
Yeah, you get a window into these special
Hopefully you
worlds
make
that
it.
the creators are going to be kind of maintaining and manipulating. And the creators themselves that are going to be involved are going to be inviting their communities in. They're going to be
so
handing out
cool.
keys. So this comes out on the 24th, or should come out on the 24th, which is the date that we're going to drop a bunch of other information about Return to Aeternum. So go to newworld.com. There'll be a ton of extra info and details on the Twitch drops and which creators are involved.
Yeah.
I'm really
I was gonna
excited.
ask you what like when you first started talking, I was like, but how's this different from Battle for New World? Because we all watched that, But as you kept talking, I'm like, oh no, this is very different.
Yeah, yeah.
This is not the same.
We learned a tremendous amount with Battle for New World, and I think that's only going to make Return to Aeternum even better. So I'm really stoked about it.
Yeah, it's very exciting. It's going to be a lot of fun. Sounds like it's going to be an incredible event. It's going to bring a lot of players back, I think, for watching their favorite streamer, and it should be good. I'm excited, yeah.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite streamer, Greg? You want to share with us?
That's a pretty easy question to answer, man. What are you talking about?
This guy, G. Henniger, I think, or Greg H.
Great day.
yeah.
There you go. I've heard, yeah.
Solid streamer.
He's pretty legendary.
I'm not a fan personally, but
Dad jokes.
I am. I'm a huge fan. I gotcha. All right, so here we are with the two Daves, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about combat today, one of my favorite subjects in the game, and so I think we have some pretty tough questions that I hope we don't get punched in the face for asking. But first, before we start, we were talking a little bit earlier, and I just wanted to ask you, how hard is it to manage all these combat modes? It's something I talk about a lot, and it just seems so daunting to manage all of the different modes in the game.
It is very daunting. We have a ton of different modes and different scale combat, right? We have small scale combat, we have large scale combat. All the weapons interact differently between all the different combat states, right? So it's a difficult thing. We try to keep on top of it. We try to stay and look at whatever the meta is for each of the modes, make sure something's not taking over. Let's say the rapier, just throwing it out there. Something like that doesn't start taking over in like one-on-one situations or things like that, and adjust from there. It is one of those things that we're just never, there's always going to be something more to fix. There's never a perfect ending to it, and so we're going to keep trying. Some of the things we are doing in our modes now, though, as you see in arenas, like we have a healing starts to degrade over time, right? So it's one of the things we're going to start doing in our modes is actually making sure that we keep that balance a little more. We might be a little more heavy-handed with it by doing those type of things in the future. And OPR, maybe we'll have some gear score scaling. Maybe we'll do things like that in the future. So there's definitely things we want to do to try to make sure that playing field becomes a little more balanced, and we might have to do some overarching rules on these modes now to try to curb it.
And it's sort of fun that it's, I know it's not good for you, but it's sort of fun that it's never done, right? Like that the meta changes, like when we did the perk rebalancing stuff, as we introduce new weapons, all this stuff keeps combat changing and fresh, and it makes his job hard because you've always got to redo the balance, but it makes it fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
we talk about it a lot of time because the meta really does. You guys do a great job with keeping the meta fresh. It's been a lot of iterations of what's the most powerful build, or what's more frequently seen in like OPR or PvE and stuff like that. So that's one of the things that balance is never finished, but it is nice to always have a fresh restart on the meta, so to say. And you guys do a great job with that for sure.
Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about the nitty-gritty now that we got that out of the way. Let's talk about some of the weapons that are pain points for myself and a lot of other players in the game. And you mentioned the rapier. Yeah. So the rapier right now is used on almost everyone's back bar, which I think is really part of what's contributing to what we see as bow PR right now in OPR. So I guess with the rapier, there's some nerfs coming in on the PTR or for the Brimstone update, but do you think that'll be enough, and do you like where combat is with the rapier, with all the escapability and the maneuverability? Is that where you want to see combat?
No, just to be very clear, escapability is just too much right now, and it's not. It was never meant to be for that. It was meant to be more of an aggressive weapon, but it is being rightfully so used right now to be defensive because it can be used that way. So I think we have a good amount of nerfs coming in for it. We hope that's enough. We don't want to nerf it into oblivion, obviously, and so we're right on the edge there. I think we're going to be in a good spot, but we'll definitely be watching and figuring that out as as Anniversary comes out. But we do want to make sure that you want people to be able to run away. You don't want just a ball of death. Like you can't just have it once somebody sees combat, they're dead. There needs to be some option for them to be able to get away. But this one is just too far. It just went too far. It's too easy to get away. You can repost, stun everybody, and then just Fletch A out of there, right? Like, and it's indefensible, and what's worse about it is it's not fun, right? Like, it's not fun to play against it. I've tried to chase them down. I wear heavy. It's impossible for me. It just feels impossible. I have to have a big group with me just to get one person down, and it's just not fun for the opponents either. So.
Oh man, I can't tell you how happy I am to hear you talk about that in that way. Yeah, I may have raged just a few times with that weapon, but yeah, go ahead, Ren.
Yeah, so I think the next favorite companion to the rapier, other than the bow, is the musket. So a lot of players complain about it in PvP. Obviously, it is a very, I guess, polarizing weapon because it's probably the worst weapon in PvE to use, say, as far as DPS goes. But in PvP, where you can scale it with the 2 stats, Dex and Int, and then you have the perk Mortal Empowerment, you have people playing Call of Duty on the mountains in OPR and headshotting people. And we're just, one of the things that I think a lot of people are interested in is how hard or difficult that is to balance of a weapon because of, it's basically if it doesn't do enough damage, it's useless type of thing, and where you're heading with the musket as far as balance goes.
I'll take this one. Yeah, I think musket is a tough one because, like you said, this is one of those where the width of the game makes it hard to balance. Because in PvE, it's weak. Let's be honest. It's struggling. But in PvP, because of the hit scan nature, it's really strong. So we need to figure out a way to balance both of those, and that's going to take some time. We do have some changes we're testing for the musket that have a little bit of fall-off damage over distance, and I think that'll help sort of the OPR on a rock situation. We have some of that, and then I think also we're looking at the stamina damage it does too, so that there can be a counter with shields also. So I think combine those 2 changes, we're doing some testing around there, I think it'll help it on the PvP side sort of become more balanced. On the PvE side, we've got more thinking to do. We've got to find a way to increase its damage in PvE without further exasperating the problem in PvP. So we're looking into that and just trying to make it a more fun weapon also.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. So one of the other pain points for me, and I think a lot of other players also, is flamethrower for the fire staff right now. So fire staff overall, I feel like is pretty solid, but whenever you are fighting multiple flamethrowers at a time, that's whenever it becomes a problem. So if I'm dueling a flamethrower and they pull that thing out, you can always stun them out of there and you can counter it. But whenever like you're in arenas and you have this cheesy 3-stack with three flamethrowers, 3 ice gauntlets in there, and you are like a melee player, really the only way to counter that is to almost do the same thing, because you'll have a guy flamethrowing you from one side and then somebody flamethrowing you from the other. If you burn your cooldown on this guy, like shield bash this guy's just flamethrowing you, so then you turn your focus to him, but by the time you do that, this guy's already flamethrowing you again because there's no cooldown on the weapon or on that ability. Is there any changes coming there?
Absolutely, yeah. It's definitely a pain point for us too. We noticed that a lot. And so I think we're going to look at the mana consumption on it for sure and make sure that it's actually, when you trigger it, you're going to know that you triggered it. Your mana bar is going to know that you triggered it. And then you're not going to be able to kind of infinitely go on this anymore. So I think it's one of those, we wanted to do that to get people to play it. Honestly, nobody was really using the flamethrower before.
Well, Red was.
And
I'm the grandfather of this toxicity for sure.
So once we got people playing it, which is great, but now it's just gone a little too far, I think. And so we're gonna take that back a little bit. It's a really fun move, though. I really love that move, and I think it's fun to play against. And it's actually, as a defender, I love the immediate counter you get, right? Like if you're thinking about it, like, and there's only one of them. Like again, it's fun. You just run up there and stun them, and you got your immediate counter to stop them from doing that. So I think there's a good counterplay to it, but it just goes too long, and it shouldn't be that powerful.
Yeah, yep.
So this is kind of back to the rapier and the mobility, escapability thing, is the armor balance and the dodge distance, the weight of equipment and blocking. Blocking is something that really doesn't get used a lot. Do you guys have any plans in the future that will kind of help maybe bring people out of the light mobility meta and maybe into more of like a medium heavy armor set that's maybe centered around blocking or something of that nature?
Yeah, I think there's definitely some changes for blocking coming. In the PTR, we already have done some changes. So we've reduced the amount of time after a block break. We've also increased the mobility while blocking. So those are 2 sort of quick changes that are already in PTR and testing. And there's more things coming. I think one of the things we're looking at is the stamina damage balance, making sure we're tuning that appropriately so it's not overdone or underdone. I think right now, it feels like you take too much stamina damage sometimes in blocking, so it makes it a little unsuccessful. Another thing we're looking at is how blocking works in group combat, right? Because it's hard to balance, like in situations where like you're getting hit by a ton of attacks. How do we balance that while also making it not too powerful in sort of one-on-one situations? So we're definitely looking at ways to sort of improve the viability of blocking.
Yeah, that sounds good. I know that's a pain point for a lot of people. There's a lot of people in our company I know that always complain about not being able to block, and people are just dodging away all the time. So that's really good to hear. So to shift gears just a second here, the heart gem runes, those are coming into the game, and I think those are going to change combat pretty heavily. Are there plans to like implement? I know this may be a little early because we're just now getting them, but like horizontal progression to add more of those in combat, or even horizontal progression in terms of like adding additional skill trees to weapons, or like what's the thought process there going forward?
So this is our first sort of cut at some real strong horizontal progression. We did it with a new ability this time, and we're excited to see how it plays out first, right? Like how are people enjoying it? What is sort of the new strategies, what it opens up? And I think, this is, I think, a pattern that we'll be doing more often. I think a game like New World with all the cool gear and the variety of modes works well with horizontal progression. So it's something we'll continue to do. There's no sort of immediate plans or things we can announce yet. I think we're sort of in a, let's get heart gems out there, see how people react to it, and then we'll decide from there.
Yeah, they're super cool. Been playing with them on the PTR, and I love them. They're really neat. I like them a lot. Yeah, good addition, I think.
Yeah, the rune glass gems with
Yeah,
hard gem. I mean, those are really going to, I think, have a massive impact on the meta for sure. This is an interesting question, I think, from maybe our standpoint, but it's PvE oriented. It is the changes to the reduction, the damage reduction on enemies. I know a lot of people's DPS weapon decisions were made off of, what is an enemy weak to, what is it resistant to, and now with those removal or the removal of that system, we already kind of see like a hatch. You have to use a hatchet to DPS. Like, do you guys have any fear or any announcements on maybe some changes that will help mitigate that? One weapon is king in PvE.
In general, we're removing the negative resistances, but we're keeping the bonuses, right? So the bonuses still are pretty strong, 20-ish% to 25%. In our mind, that should be enough to make a decision. If a weapon, like the hatchet, is so strong that a 20% bonus isn't enough to get you off of it, that's more a problem with the hatchet than the system. And I think, we really like removing the sort of the negative resistance part for the starting part of the game, right? Like if you're just starting out and like you really like this weapon, and the MSQ is taking you against the loss, right? And it's like, oh, it sucks when your main doesn't work there. So I think that's the main reason we wanted to remove the resistance side. And I think, our goal is to make the bonus side enough to create weapon diversity, because we don't want a world in which everyone's got hatchet for mutations, right? Like that's not what we want. So
yeah,
we'll be keeping a very close eye on that, making sure that happens.
Yeah, sounds good. I think everyone wants build diversity and not to be pigeonholed into a certain build. I know there's a lot of players who like to go in there and use their particular weapon, and if you're not using that weapon, then oftentimes it's hard to find a group. So it's good to hear that build diversity is coming in. So to shift back to PvP for just a second, I know we're kind of shifting gears and all over the place here, but what is your ideal like picture of PvP in well, let's just say like OPR, since that's probably the most popular game mode. Right now it's so range heavy, and before we've seen like unkillable healers and some other things happen in the game. What would be like your ideal meta? A mixture of all, or like some very heavy melee combat happening, or what is the ideal meta?
I definitely see a little bit of mixture of all. Obviously, we want everybody in there playing, having fun. I would like it to be a little more melee oriented than it is right now. I think it's just a little bit too ranged, and that's because of how incredibly powerful like the musket is, and some of these builds that let you get away with the rapier.
The rapier.
So I do want melee to feel really important, and this also goes back to blocking, right? Because currently, right, the blocking isn't effective. So as you're approaching as a melee, it's you get into a group fight, it's not a good thing, right? Like if you go to block, you're going to be block broken immediately, and that's a terrible state to get into. So I think it's trying to figure out how to get that to be a little more powerful so that people would want to do that, right? Like, and I think I really want melee to be more important in those fights. I play melee all the time in OPR. I'm just trying to get the feel for it and just see how can we get this to kind of get to that better position. But I love having snipers. I think it's great that somebody's sitting back there with a musket shooting people. Like that's fun. Yeah. That's part of the game. I mean, I don't want anybody not to do that, right? So I think I love that diversity of what the roles are in the mode. So for me, it's just getting a little more viability to the melee, which will kind of, I think, push us to that, like percentages will be really nicely stacked with range, healing, melee, everything in between. So I think the goal is to kind of get to that point where you can feel viable as a sword and shield. Like I just want you to be able to go in as a sword and shield and feel great, not just do the leaping strike combo, right? Like it's more than that, right? Like I want you to be able to go in there and feel like you're leading the charge going in there. And I think that's something we're getting towards. We've been trying to tune towards it, but we still have a little ways to go. It's not by no means, like I said, never done.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge to continuously improve and change. I think for sure, you got a tough job there for sure, without a doubt. Yeah.
Just to add on that real quick, I think I agree with Dave. Like, combined arms is what we want. We want people to come up with interesting compositions for their 20-person group. Yeah. Another thing we might do in addition to combat balance that can help OPR is we'll also continuously look at how scoring works in the game rules to make sure that we're, sort of incentivizing the type of behavior that makes for fun OPR matches, not just sort of like stat padding and kill padding that you sometimes see with some of these PR people.
Yeah. So what about arenas? We talked a little bit about OPR, et cetera. Are you happy with the state of where arenas are? I don't know how you'll ever solve the problem of cheese comps going in there and just dominating the arenas. Are you happy with the state of them right now?
No, I'm not. So I don't know what we've said or not said right now. So
just are you happy? I think.
Are you happy? Yeah. Are you happy? Yeah.
No, it's very frustrating right now when you go against the 3 stacks, right? And it's just not a fun experience for any solo queuer at all going into that, right? You're going to be stomped, and it's not fun. It's the keyboard punching kind of aggression comes out of that.
Do we have any changes in mind that might address that?
I think we have announced it. Okay, good. I didn't know if we had or not. So we are going to have like a group, basically, if you're in a 3-person group, you're going to be matched up against other 3-person groups. So we're going to try to get that to happen there. And then if you're solo queue or 2 queue, you're going to go into a separate queue. So it should kind of get you away from it going against the 3 stacks, which will help that a little bit. We're also going to look into gear score scaling. So they get people a little closer. So it's not going to, make everybody even, but it will get people closer in power level. So once you're in there, you'll go up to 600, no matter what gear score you're at. I imagine you guys are already at 625, but for everybody else, they'll be going up to 600 to get a little closer. You'll still have a little bit of advantage of the 25 there for people that are above it. And so we're trying to get that a little more standardized, trying to get that a little closer, while still giving benefit to the people that have actually ground for their gear and did all these great things to get up to that level. So we hope that will start the change going, but definitely is not going to be the end-all be-all. And then once we see the results of how that's going, we're going to make more adjustments to it.
This is like that maybe the final question we have, and it kind of piggybacks on his. Any plans we've got the group finder for PvE, and you're able to queue as like a tank, healer, DPS. Any plans for OPR, arenas maybe, since we're doing the solo and group queues, to queue in as a role, maybe as a healer or damage, melee type stuff?
Unfortunately, no immediate plans. I think that's something, we've thought about, and I see value there, but it's not something that's going to be happening in the short term, unfortunately.
I think that's going to do it for this segment. We appreciate it, guys.
All right, well, this is a big topic of discussion in the community, is territory control. So let's just start off with this. One of the complaints from the community is just the ability to participate in wars. Wars is like the in-game PvP experience. It is extremely influential in the game, owning territory and collecting gold and everything like that. So we're just, first off, just any like general sweeping changes that you guys can talk about in the next update.
Yeah, I think the biggest update that's coming in the Brimstone Sands release is the revenue sharing changes, right? So what this does is the way we create income stays the same. It's based on taxes and the activities, but what happens is all that gold goes into a kitty now, and it's distributed to companies based on certain tiers of percentages. So we have like tier 1 towns, which gets 12.5, then tier 2, 3, and 4, which get down to 5%. So, this is a big change. I think the goal of the change is manyfold. One is we hope it makes all territories valuable. Right now we have this world where like just Everfall and Windsward are very valuable, and they'll, like things like First Light, you're not going to make much money off that. This should make every town valuable. The other thing it does, we hope it creates like this sense of progression, right? Like small companies can fight over the tier 4 towns, still make a little bit of money, and hopefully then progress up the ladder into the higher tier towns. And then sort of the last big part of this that we really like is that income you get is modulated by your territory level. And what we like about this is it gives people a reason to upgrade your towns to max level. It makes those invasions and winning them more important, because when you go down a couple of points, you're going to be making less income. So that's the big change that's coming in with Brimstone Sands.
It's huge.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. I think that's going to solve some of the issues for sure with the influx of money going to certain companies. Are there any plans in the future ever to kind of distribute the money to factions in any way versus just companies? So the controlling company gets most of the money, but then some of the faction benefits as well?
No immediate plans. I mean, we already have the faction carts, which was our first sort of step at this, right? Like, so when you own that town, there's a cart that everyone in the faction can use. I'll be honest, they're not like super, like I don't go out of my way to get them, but if I pass by, I'll pick it up, right? It's some free resources. I think that's an avenue we can look at to boost further. And I think, giving some benefits to the faction, we're aligned with, doing a little more of that.
Yeah, I think that would be really cool. So I know one of the other things is like the war cooldown. I know that's something that's on the kind of on the PTR right now. If you join a company and try to leave a company, you get a message that pops up that tells you a little bit about the war cooldown mechanics. So can you explain how that's going to work in the future?
Yeah, just to be clear on that, it's in PTR for testing right now. It's not going to go out with the anniversary. It's going to go out a little bit later. But what it basically is when you leave a guild, you're going to go on a 3-day war cooldown, which means you can't join a war and you can't generate influence. And it's going to be really impactful because it's paired with company minimums for wars, meaning it'll be 2 different numbers. We still haven't quite settled on exactly the number. That's part of why we're testing and stuff. But more on the defensive side, when you're defending a territory, you're going to need, most of your army is going to need to be company members. So because of the war cooldown, we're hoping that this takes a major chunk out of the shell company problem, which is, a big part of what you're saying. It's like when the 50 best players on a server are able to use shell companies to just kind of go everywhere and fight in every war, it severely limits the amount of war slots available to everybody else. So the goal here is to change the rules of the game so that it's more confined. So you have to be more strategic as a 50-person group and where you're going to hold, because you can't hold too many places.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. I think that should fix some of the problems we're seeing for sure.
Definitely.
There's one more coming with that also, the war fatigue. So what we're looking at, and this isn't, it's not going to happen with the Brimstone release, but in the future we're looking at sort of limiting the amount of wars a single person can do in a day. And again, the goal there, and we would do this on an account-wide basis, so because there's people have various alts due to merges, and the goal here is again to distribute. Because war is fun. We want everyone doing it. And we don't want that one small group of people determining all the wars, to give people more of a chance to participate in this fun activity.
That's awesome to hear. War fatigue is definitely one of those things that was discussed that could definitely make a huge difference. And it's glad to hear that you guys are working on that. One of the other awesome things about PvP is open world. I think, the memories of Great Cleave and early on in the game, pushing territories and having that resistance of large groups of people was something that we'll always remember in New World. Do you guys have any adjustments coming that will potentially promote that Great Cleave open world experience that kind of we had all having fun in during the introduction to the PvP track?
Yeah, this is a big area of focus for us over the longer term. So to kind of sketch out what we're kind of thinking 3 major things. First one being timing windows. Like that Great Cleave, Great Cleave was the place to be, so it drove everybody to one place to do open world PvP. So if you can kind of imagine a world where at any given time, only 2 territories are generating influence right now. So hopefully it will drive everybody to those zones. It kind of happens organically at times, like during peak times, like when there's an influence push happening, everybody swarms there. That's when there's the most fun in open world PvP right now. We hope will happen is with these time windows, that'll just happen all the time. And then once that's in place, one of the really cool things about open world PvP is the fort control points, which are, every fort has a faction buff that it gives, but each of them also grants extra influence on PvP mission turn-in. So if you can imagine multiple control points within each territory, I didn't say a number, I just said multiple.
Hey man,
one of the things that we're not sure about, but yes. Yes, so now you can start to wonder like what like different factions can be controlling these, and again, it's all within a window of time. So like everybody's going to swarm there, fight over these points.
And might like the number of forts you have control the multiplier you get for those faction missions?
Exactly. This multiplier might go very, very, very high, which would again hopefully address one of the problems with PvP missions and influence right now, which is that it can seem like it takes a very long time.
Yeah, that seems pretty interesting. I know one of the problems whenever you implement open world PvP systems like this, though, is oftentimes you'll have big, huge zergs running around just dominating everything, which can take away from the experience a little bit. Is there any mechanics implementing or you're planning to implement to try to have some, like, not necessarily super small scale, but to prevent these huge zergs from just dominating the map?
It's an area where, I mean, I think we're heading into uncharted territory. We're going to have to play test. We're going to have to feel things out. I mean, I know some things that we're talking about are like, you know, lock windows where like once a fort is claimed, it can lock. I mean, Dave, if you have any other thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think the other thing is this timing window isn't going to be like an hour either, right? Like it's going to be, the main thing we want to avoid is the 2 a.m. pushes, right? Like as a company owner, it sort of sucks to have to defend those pushes. And you can't do it. Like, so I think the idea of the timing window is to give a broad enough time frame where, you know, it's not like a big zerg, like 1 hour go there, but, you know, shallow enough to where you can't do those sorts of things. And the other part I like about it is, like, it'll feel more like you can win as a defender, right? Right now it feels like I'm just going to lose eventually as a defender anyway, so why bother counter pushing too much? With this, if you have, let's say, you know, a couple hours window, like if you can defend in that, then you're safe until your next window opens up. And I think that'll be a nice feeling for those defenders.
Yeah.
So yeah, and you know, so let's say we add multiple fort points. You've got the different locations for faction missions. So I think the goal is to have a couple different hot spots in the territory when that timing window is on, not just sort of one big ball.
Right. That'll be awesome. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, those improvements are insane to hear about. The final thing we really have for you guys is practice wars. They've been kind of teased a little bit, but when can the community kind of expect that we can see these practice wars kind of coming into live?
This one's not on the roadmap right this second, but it is definitely something that we all really agree that we should have for many, many reasons. I mean, you know, we want to give more content to more players. We want to give companies a chance to experience war and practice and get their skills up in it.
Yeah, so it's something, like Dan said, we agree with that we want. It's just there's higher priorities at the moment, so it's not on our short-term list.
Yeah. I think that'll about do it. You have any more questions for this?
No.
Territory control?
Thanks, guys. I appreciate that. Those changes are something to get excited about for sure, so we appreciate it. All right, well, next is our crafting segment with Phil and Tony. We appreciate you guys joining us. We got a lot to talk about for crafting.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Yeah, it's crazy to be here in the studio talking with you guys. I mean, as a first timer, I'm just excited to be here, Mr. Redbyrd and Mr. Brody.
Can I get my name right, man?
It's the nerves. It's the nerves.
We're glad to have you on the show today, man. Thank you for joining us here.
Flip the tables.
Yeah,
I love it.
Awesome.
So let's hop right in here. The first one we have is there's been a lot of adjustments in the way you gain experience when crafting, such as aptitude and everything like that. Are there anything we can can you comment on how the pacing is for crafting right now and where you kind of stand there?
Sure. Yeah. I'll jump in first here. One of the big focuses that we've been working on over the past like half a year, I would say, is trying to get that pacing smoothed out in your progression between all the gathering, then the refining, and then the crafting. So as you kind of go up those rungs, making sure that you kind of keep pace with all of those in line where, and you're incentivized to go gather higher end resources, refine those into higher end materials, and then use those materials to build higher end crafts. They're not just like focusing solely on iron swords to 200, right? I think that was a big lesson that we had at launch and seeing how people were interacting with the system, and really something we've been working hard to improve. And so I feel really good about the way that kind of gathering and crafting now work with our latest release. Gathering and refining. And then crafting's feeling a lot better, and we've got a lot of ways to like juice up the experience and the time it takes you to get from 1 to 200. But I still think it could be improved a little bit though too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's pretty well said. I think one of the big things that should help with that is going to be the changes for you get the double XP for the initial first time you craft something, right? Because like right now when you go through and you craft a new level, it's like of this tier, how many of a specific thing do I need to craft? Well, I'm going to go make 140 ironwood swords, and that's it. But now that you get that double bump for all the individual crafts, at least you get some more variety in there. It should help it feel a little bit more fresh and give you those bigger, I think, bumps of progression, which will be really good.
Yeah, totally. And it just incentivizes you to it's almost like a little bit of a checklist too, of like craft everything.
Yeah.
And at least we reward you now for going up. You hit that new rung. Oh, I can craft star metal weapons now. Okay, well, I'm gonna get double XP if I craft a sword and a hatchet and a bow and everything.
As you go
else.
through all the different things.
Yeah, which is pretty nice. I think it's a feels bad moment a little bit whenever you are crafting just iron swords or
Just-
iron
Yeah.
whatever over and over and over again, and you don't really get a lot of benefit other than leveling up quickly. Yes,
Yeah,
it's great change.
Right.
One of the things that we saw early on, right, was the whole like how many tens of thousands of arrows do I need to make?
Yeah.
And it just that's
Yeah.
just, that's just
Ash stain arrows. Like
Yep.
we've had a few things where it was just
do
craft
this.
a million of this. That's not the experience we ever wanted, right?
I'm guilty of the stain. I took those, opportunities for sure. So I think one of the other really big things about crafting is we have the introduction of scarabs coming with Brimstone Sands. We've seen timeless shards come into the game recently as well. So all of these things are kind of lending themselves towards making crafting better items a little bit easier. So is that because getting a Abyss item in New World is pretty hard. It's elusive. So I think for me, I think getting that item is probably a good thing because it keeps you trying to chase that good item. But sometimes it is a little bit frustrating, a little bit too hard almost. So heading in those directions with the timeless shard scarabs, is that something we see more of in the future and like a kind of an easier way to get those items?
Yeah, two areas I think we're really sensitive to right now, and we've heard a lot of community feedback on this as well, is generally like the cost it takes to actually craft one of these items and to roll.
Yeah.
Some people might refer to it as gambling a little bit. I don't know.
I mean, some people. I don't know.
Who does
I don't know who that would be.
But it's a fair assessment because it either costs you a lot of time or a coin to go get these resources, and then you're throwing them in the pot. At least we give you an item, unlike some other games out there that might not give you anything. That kind of leads into the second point. So cost is one vector that we're really sensitive of, and we want to be respectful to that time and that coin investment anyone's putting in. And the other one is just more agency and control over that. And I don't know. You want to talk to that part a little bit?
Yeah, so I think the big thing, right? Like you go through, you level up, you get to 200, and then you're like, I'm gonna craft some stuff. But if it feels like what you're after is just unobtainium, you just kind of stop and you get disengaged. And so timeless shards were kind of a first step. Golden scarab is gonna be another step. But it's a very, it's a thin line for us to walk because if we make it too easy, well, now everybody has everything. And if we make it too hard, now you're just completely disconnected and you don't want to involve in the system anymore, right? And so I think there will be ways for us to continue to give more agency, I guess, if you will. Because as long as it is requiring the scarabs, for example, you take a look at, what is the playtime? What are the activities people have to do? People are out there having fun, they're adventuring, they're doing their thing, and they're getting a reward to have more agency. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And the more ways we can figure out how to do that, I think the better.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the scarabs is something I'm looking forward to as a crafter and to improving my gambling habit for
but
sure.
at least a 2 good perk item is still better than nothing, right? Like it's still you could have a good 2 perk item and you could either trade that for a good amount of money or it could be really useful to you in your gameplay. There's a lot of other ideas we have floating around there of how to actually add more. You ask can we see more of that in the future? I think I don't know if it's going to necessarily take the form of an item though versus more of a refinement to a system. But again, it's still a tightrope that we have to walk of making it the pursuit fun, but not just overly easy where everybody kind of has bis. But definitely want players to feel like they're looking for better items versus just trying to find a single good item.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think actually on that point, right, there's bis and there's almost bis. And for a lot of people, almost bis is good enough.
Yeah.
And so there's still a market for that, and I think there's still a chase for that, right?
Heck yeah.
A lot of people, of course, everybody wants bis, but if you find something that's really, really close that can hold you over for a while, that's still a huge win.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely. So this is a big one for crafters. We have any plans? We got music.
Yep.
So now, any plans? any additional crafting skills that are coming to New World in the upcoming future?
Got ideas.
We could edit it out.
We have ideas, but I think one of my favorite parts about New World as a game in general is how good I think our trade skill section is. Getting lost in the open world, like it's literally fun to chop down a tree, like in our game, which I think is hard to say for other games I've played. And so we definitely want to continue to support that. Nothing specific to really say, but we are taking inspiration from other open world games and some of our favorite experiences we've had over the years as gamers ourselves, and like trying to figure out what does that mean in Aeternum. It's a very elusive answer, but it's just, I will say trade skills is something we're going to continue to support for a long time.
Awesome. Sounds awesome. Sounds like the future's bright for gatherers and crafters. I like that.
I think
It's gonna
so.
be good.
Or just, players that want to do something else other than just kill monsters all day.
Yeah.
We'll have plenty of that for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, that other stuff that you can do, I thought that was a cool reaction to our musical instruments. Like,
People loved it.
I actually like, it's fun when I'm waiting for a chest run to start, or I'm in a holding pen waiting to get out for like in OPR or War, and someone's just kicking it, playing some music, and people are dance emoting all around.
I gotta say, when you're doing a portal run or a chest run, and you're at a portal, and someone off to the side just whips out the freaking upright bass and just starts playing while everybody else is just fighting, I laugh every time.
Listen,
Yeah.
they're exploiting donos from people spamming the chest closing button.
They know what they're doing.
I hate to
behind the
expose
chest,
those
yeah.
people, but that's exactly, we know, you know who you are.
Yeah, you know who you are.
The one thing I will say to that, though, and I think you said it really, really well, is future trade skills. How does it wrap into the rest of the world? Music came online. I was like, oh yeah, music is cool. But then when you start looking at the buffs and stuff that it gives you, music is actually quite impactful.
Yeah.
And so anytime that we add something else, how does it hit the rest of the ecosystem that's in the game? There's a lot of levers, there's a lot of switches, a lot of knobs. But what is the right way to integrate to all those different things? And it can make the trade skill have a whole lot more kick than just like adding something that's kind of standalone.
Which that's something I think New World does a very good job at, is all the trade skills are pretty impactful in the game, and the gathering is probably some of the best I've ever, it is the best I've ever had in any MMO for sure. It's excellent. So one of the other things, there's a pain point for players that you can't really see what recipes you have at any given time. So, so one of the questions that I have is that, do you have any plans ever to kind of create a system that's almost like an achievement system, or like a separate menu, not necessarily where it's a crafting station, but like where you see your tabs for achievements, your bio, all that stuff. Maybe you have a recipes tab, and then within that screen you could see maybe like your your furnishing or your cooking or whatever, and have them listed and with check marks beside which ones you collected, etc. Just a way to keep up with it for players to be able to chase those items.
Yeah, as someone who likes that stuff as a player, I really like that idea. I think it's a cool idea. I will say we don't have plans to do it currently, but thank you.
Yeah.
And no, I think it's a conversation that Tony and I can really dig into outside of this and really figure that out. Like, well, okay, that's cool. There's a lot of value there, I think.
Yeah, I think that because it ties into, there's a couple issues that could be resolved there. One is, what do I have, what don't I have? Two, if I want to cook a certain meal or whatever, what ingredients do I need for that, right? There's friction in there trying to figure that out while you're out, in the wild farming or whatever you may be doing. So I think there's definitely some areas of that can be massaged. Right now, if you go into your trade skill screen and you click on, say, weaponsmithing, if you will, you just have that super long list on the right. There's just a lot, I think, that we can do within the screens we already have to just make that a lot more pleasing to interact with.
Awesome.
That'd be great. Big addition to the game. One last question. You spoke a little bit about this earlier, is depth of crafting. Is there anything we can expect that maybe expands upon the depth of the current trade skills that we have?
It's a good question. What I will say right now is that it's something we talk about a lot. It's conversations that come up a lot, and a couple different vectors kind of keep bubbling up to the surface, which is something I mentioned a little bit earlier, which was, how can we give crafters better control over what they're crafting? That's a big thing that we talk about a lot. We're constantly examining ways we can do improvements to the current system. So it's not like necessarily new crafting, but it's just like optimizations to existing systems to make those better, to give crafters a little bit more stability in what they're crafting, on top of like what we're already doing with the scarabs and the timeless shards. And then the other topic is identity, which I'll throw to Tony to
Yeah. So like one of the big things and a big talking point we constantly like kind of circle back to is player identity. And when it comes to crafting, gathering, refining, crafting, all that whole, I guess, ecosystem is such a big part of New World. But like, how can a player have more identity within it, right? What can they do to separate themselves from the crowd, if you will? And how can they, how can we give them more depth in a system? And so, when we speak to the future, whether or not it is, additional trade skills or, additional recipes, are there other ways that we can allow you to put in time to get rewards that are a bit more specific with what you have interest in? And so I think there's a lot there that we can work with. And I'll just say that I'm really excited for the future. I'll leave it at that.
That's great.
Awesome. Sounds like some pretty interesting stuff coming in for the crafters then. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. And more depth, more systems. It sounds awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to it. All right. Well, I think that actually does it this time. Yeah. So thank you guys. Thank you.
Yeah,
guys.
appreciate it. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome here anytime.
Oh, appreciate it.
All right, so now we're here with Rob and Mike. Thank you guys for being here. We have a couple of questions for you today about Brimstone. So the first question we have on the docket, it's one that a lot of players want to know, is are we going to be able to fight the sandworm that we see in Brimstone?
Yes, eventually you're going to be able to face the sandworm. We're thinking it's going to be an encounter for more than 5 players. Details are still yet to come, but keep your eyes open, your ears peeled for upcoming news on some of the cool stuff we're going to do with the sandworm.
Awesome, that's going to be super.
And if you can, I mean, if you are able to defeat him, you'll learn some cool new stuff about him and like a lot of the backstory of the world that related to where he comes from, like his origins, which are rooted in pretty ancient Aeternum history.
Nice. Always great to learn more lore in the game. I know there's a lot of people who love the lore of Aeternum, but getting more of it is always a good thing. So yeah, I'm excited about that one. For sure.
Now, we've wandered around in Brimstone for a long time. The features inside of the zone are second to none. The jump puzzles, all of the chest mechanics and everything like that. Is that something we can kind of expect moving forward with future zones?
Yeah, I'd say that. Yeah, I mean the standards in Brimstone are certainly push the experience overall. Like whether you're exploring or doing quests or fighting different groups of AI. And I would say that that's the standard that we're going to have going forward. Certainly with the quest, I can speak to that. Like I can say, the quest dynamics that we use, the variety of puzzles, the way the story flows, particularly with the story around Imhotep, really is the standard that we look at when we're doing the next round of quests.
And it's the gimmicks that we put in there, dynamic events, things that make you look at the world differently or interact with it differently. There's so many tools that are available to you as a player. And so we want to explore, thematically what fits the best for whatever zone that we're working on at the time, whether it, meshes really well with the biomes or the characters and overall story. Just like how do those integrate into, those POIs and that whole experience.
Yeah, it's been awesome just running through Brimstone on the PTR has been quite the experience. Unlike any other zone in the game so far, it's just really, really good. The jump puzzles and all the intricacies of the zone have been really, really interesting, a lot of fun to run through, no doubt. So we also have Brimstone and the new player experience. The quests have just been completely redone. Everything is so much more streamlined. The story is a lot better. The lore is really starting to come to life now. Are those all things we can expect to happen moving forward into the future? Is that something you guys are leaning more heavily into? Or are those types of mechanics in the game just very much story-driven type of quest, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, we're very focused on creating memorable characters that make an impression and you get to interact with multiple times, rather than just everywhere you go, there's some new character who offers you some sort of, laundry list task to do. Actually having characters who are traveling with the player, their stories are unfolding as you go, your relationship with them is evolving, and hopefully, it keeps everything, more interesting as you go through these things. And of course, as we just mentioned, the quest types, like the variety and the activities that you do, that's something that we're going to continue. I mean, I would say it's even going to get better because we're looking at we're taking all the lessons that we learned from Brimstone Sands and using those. We're improving our tools. and getting a better grip on like, you know, how dense to place quests and characters and stuff like that for the best experience.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. I think story building and building relationships with players and the character and the lore and the game is like a recipe to keep people interested in New World, like long term, as far as the story development and everything like that goes.
Yeah, I mean, and I would add just that, you know, we're going to be introducing a lot more characters who are historically or mythically based. Like, so the names you recognize, you know, you meet Imhotep and a few others who I won't, you know, say a name right now because you may not have met them yet, but yeah, you'll be meeting a lot of more mythological figures, characters from well, in the RSC you meet you fight Sir Gawain, but we'll have other characters from the Arthurian mythos that come into the game, and yeah, a lot more, you know, a lot more recognizable names that I think players will see, and every one of them has a unique Aeternum twist. You know, like how did they get here? What's the real story behind the myths that you've read? And how that relates to this
and
world.
continue to build upon all the great visuals and landmarks and places to explore and tying like all those thematic themes that you'd get in the story and the lore to these physical places that you like, oh, I wonder what's over that ridge line or what's behind that alcove of trees. Like always having that thing kind of leading you forward and just presenting a beautiful world, but now just expanding that world. And that's what I love about Brimstone itself is like now we're introducing this brand new desert experience, and we want to continue pushing that forward with, you know, zones in the future.
Yeah, sounds amazing. I think New World is sitting prime for all kinds of expansion for all types of different stories because of the way that the land is kind of laid out in this mysterious feel around Aeternum that you can almost bring in anything you want or any culture you want and add it to the game. And I think that's pretty exciting for players moving forward because there's no telling what we're going to see, and I'm here for it. I'm ready to see what's out there next for sure.
Yeah, the final thing I think we have for you guys is the zone size. I mean, Brimstone is almost 3 times as large as any zone that we've seen on the map. It's the first zone that's been added since live. Is this what we should expect moving forward as far as zone size? Is Brimstone?
Brimstone is an exception to the rule in the sense that it's a desert, and the desert had to be vast. So it had to be very big to support a lot of the stories and themes that we were pushing for. So I would say it's towards the extreme large end of what our zones would be, and I think they're typically would be more the size of like an Eben scale or even a Reekwater. So more nominal in size, but that's because we want to tell, you know, more stories, have more unique things that happen in the world. So not saying never, it just really depends. What are the story influences that are driving us? What are the experiences that players need to go on that journey? And that'll kind of dictate what size things really need to be.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about, and one of the things that I think there's a high likelihood you'll see are, you know, a big themed area that's perhaps multiple zones. So like you could see Brimstone, we could have broken it up into 3 different zones based on the size. And we may have some areas like that in the game coming up as we expand into more, you know, world lore, mythology type stuff.
Yeah, sounds awesome. I get kind of excited about the story for sure. I like to get really immersed and really drawn in, and I think the new player experience is part of that. That's really going to help draw players in, and I'm just excited to see what's out there and what's to come, man. So should be great.
Yeah, because it's going to influence the NPCs that you interact with, the enemy types that are there, the cool new weapons and gear that you're going to get.
Yeah.
So, yeah, bring it on.
Yeah, we're excited about what's coming. It's going to be good.
Yeah, us too. All right, well, I think that about does it. Ray, do you have any
Well,
more?
I gotta, you know, my community would be very upset with me if I didn't publicly apologize to Mike for.
Oh yeah,
for
you do need to apologize. You owe him an apology.
What did we do?
What happened?
It was in the. I may have teabagged you during
It
the
wasn't
dev
may
event.
have. It definitely happened. Man.
I want to let you know.
Let me thank you for doing that.
It wasn't aggressive.
Slow down here.
There was some bribery.
I'm pretty sure Lane is the blame.
Did he?
I mean,
Scott?
Yeah, oh yeah, he instigated. As far as I know, at least that's
Sure.
what community team. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was Lane.
Let's
See,
blame it on
was-
Scott.
It was totally Lane.
All right, let's go. Scott Lane.
Scott's been.
I mean, I can
Actually, his fault, not mine.
I can scoot back if you guys need to settle this.
No, we've
Oh no, I'm cool.
We've resolved the beef.
Yeah, no beef here.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, see,
The culprit is somewhere else.
yeah.
All right. Well, I think that'll do it for this segment. Thank you, guys. It was awesome.
All right, well, that does it for the October dev video. Scott, again, we want to thank you for having us out. It's been a long time dream of ours to be out to the studio, so thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Just echoing the sentiment that Red has here. It's been incredible. Thank you for having us out. It's been a super fun day, and we just appreciate you guys a lot.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for all the hard questions today. And just to finish it off, thanks for all the support again. Like, we've been listening to you for so long. It's fun to finally meet in person, and can't be happier having you here. So thanks.
Awesome.